Okay, so the last part of this case study is talking about the reflection of what we did as a teacher and improvements and also things that we could work on. And something that, these are just a few things that I noticed. So I believe I could improve in my classroom instruction strategies. There were times when I explained a concept and witnessed some confusion among the students, and I have found that even on simple assignments, it can be beneficial for students to have a written form of instructions in front of them. I've learned it can become easy to facilitate learned helplessness as well, and especially if you care for your students and you really desire their success. The moments where I encouraged more autonomy among my students led to more authenticity in their work. Um, and as far as classroom strategies goes, going back to that with the instructions, the experience that I had that led me to believe so strongly that that's important is I was teaching a lesson and I gave instructions that weren't exactly well explained. I thought it made sense in my head, but I didn't have a clear definition for what they were doing. And we got sidetracked for like 10 to 15 minutes. So I am now super, the value of this is super important to me now. Um, and as far as learned helplessness goes, that's something that I think is probably one of my greatest weaknesses is um, it's just because I would take a student and I would talk to them and they wouldn't understand a concept. And so I would find myself explaining it to them and telling them what to write, not intentionally, but I would give them an example. And a lot of the times the students would pretty much just rephrase what I had told them rather than use my example as inspiration for their own work. So that is something that is sometimes challenging to avoid. But I definitely agree with this that your students will be more authentic in their work if you give a good balance between modeling, scaffolding, and allowing them to spread their wings and fly off and do their own thing. So just I need to learn not to mess with their own individual progression. So another thing I learned is classroom management does not mean that I have to yell or put off a bad cop vibe. I need to prepare myself for the possibility of things going wrong in the classroom as well. Sometimes I would idealize how each of my lessons would turn out. And I think that's normal for most teachers, and you want to be positive about your lessons. You don't want to come in and say, oh, well, this is going to just totally fail. But I would just assume that the students would be as excited as I was about the lesson. And for the most part, I did really well in finding content that was relevant and interesting to the students. Even when the students were having big behavioral problems, I felt like they were interested in the subject. It was just the fact that I didn't explain things well sometimes, and that I didn't have the management to pull it off smoothly. So that's just important, and I've just learned it so much more. In my desire to be a kind teacher, I've sometimes put off giving them expectations that I actually check up on them for, like not just saying things that I want them to do without actually expecting them to do the action. So I've just learned that we have every right as teachers to expect a lot from our students, and in fact, it is kind and it is good for us to expect that, and sometimes that means that our students are not going to like us. And that's something that I've learned that I need to accept, that sometimes my students might not like me. Um, I mean, I hope they will, and I'll do my best to be a teacher that they feel comfortable around, but sometimes that means that you really have to implement the rules and make sure that they are aware that they are accountable. And so that's something that I'm working on, and I progressed in some ways, and other ways I need to do better. Something that I do well is I have patience and I have diligence. Now that sounds kind of vague, and what I mean with that is that there would be really hard days in the classroom with our teaching, and I would be discouraged, but I would come back and I would still feel happy and ready to do the class. So that's the thing. I think with my teaching, that something's going to help me with my first year is that I have a lot of diligence with class, and I don't feel like giving up if something is wrong. I just think back about what I did wrong and I work on fixing it. So I think I am overall a pretty humble person, and I'm ready to do the work to help me become a better teacher, and I care about my students. And I love them, which sounds cheesy, but I do, and I think that is a strength that I have. So I am just really grateful for the opportunity I had to learn from this semester. It was a pleasure to work with this student and learn more about her. She has a lot of strengths and qualities that I think are very admirable for a person of her age.